Good morning. My name is John Green with Association Member Benefits Advisors, and welcome to our OREA conversation. We're continuing our fall series of our webinar educational classes. Today, we're talking about the basics of long-term care, kind of a 101 session, just a little high-level overview. We'll talk more in detail about that in a moment. I'm joined today by your Executive Director, Sabra Tucker, and our AMBA leader up in the state of Oklahoma, David Moritz, and they're serving today as our co-hosts. Be here to answer any questions that you have, any topics you want to discuss. Feel free to drop it into chat, put it into Q&A, and then at the end of the session, we'll stop recording. And at that point, if you want to ask your question live, if you don't feel comfortable typing it in, we can do that. Or you can simply hold up your hand on the reaction bar, and we can take care of that for you as well. So, Sabra, I know the fall has kicked off pretty heavily, and we've got some elections coming up and stuff like that. Tell us what's going on at OREA this fall.
Well, a lot of our locals have already begun meeting for the school year. Some of them are getting back together for the first time since the pandemic, and I know they're all glad to see each other. And I think some of them feel like attendance coming back is a little bit slow, and that's understandable with COVID numbers in Oklahoma probably being higher still than we would like them to be. But a new vaccine is coming out that is supposed to be even better. And I know senior citizens get priority on those vaccines over other groups. So, hey, if they're going to put us to the front of the line, we'll go. And yes, it is election cycle, the midterm election cycle. And we have some very important races coming up this November. One being for governor and one being for probably the most important one from our perspective is the state superintendent race. And we really feel like some public education issues are on the line. And so that is something that our people are working on getting out the word about. We encourage members, if they haven't heard anything, if they're not involved with the local, please feel free to reach out to our office and we'll share some of our perspective on the issues. We never tell people who they have to vote for, but we certainly can give them the perspective of looking at it as an educator and what we think, what people we can put in place to have good policy, not only for our teachers in the schools, but for retirees as well. Because, we're always trying to look out for that defined benefit pension and improving benefits for our retirees. We certainly think it's a good time for the legislature to look at a cost of living adjustment due to high inflationary pressures. In fact, people might be interested to know that if they're on the state insurance plan, specifically Health Choice, that premium is going up $15 a month come January of 2023. So it's going to squeeze your pocketbook even tighter. Another reason it's good to be a good financial planner and look at what our member benefits partners can do to help people stretch those membership dollars for all the different things. Even if it's as simple as, hey, we're going to take a trip. We're going to go visit my sister-in-law in another state. Are there any discounts out there that we can take advantage of? So we're proud to partner with AMBA on this endeavor because we want to help our retirees have the best quality of life possible in those golden years, or as we got to the point that we can finally enjoy some of the fruits of our labor after all those years of working. So John, I know long-term care is one of those things that people can take advantage of, but we all need a little education on that to know what kind of planning we need to do for the future. Because, well, we're all going to get there, but anyway, we appreciate what you all do, and I'll turn it back over to you, John.
Thank you, Sabra. I appreciate the opportunity to be up there with you a couple of weeks ago and just sit and see the office and go through what some of your issues are coming up for this fall. Now, David, I know you've been out with some of the local chapters lately. Tell me what you're seeing in some of those local chapters and what you're able to share, so that if somebody wants to schedule you or your team to come out and visit a local chapter this fall.
Yeah, thank you for that. I got to be with Blaine County yesterday. They had a great turnout. I believe the number ended up being higher than they had previously before COVID and higher than anticipated. Kind of their first big or real meeting in the last 2 years or so. So for that county, thankfully they had some great numbers. It was a great time getting to talk with them. And of course, for anyone else or any other local units, myself and my team, we are spread around the state to help the best that we can for any type of meeting or local chapter unit meeting. We'd be happy to come and talk about any number of our benefits and discounts, kind of like what, like we do on here, but we can give you that hands-on personal feel there as well.
Great. Thank you, David. I'm going to have David share a little bit later just some of his experiences with OREA members in the state and kind of how they have handled this long-term care conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but just real quickly, for those of you who haven't joined us before, my name is John Green. I work with Association Member Benefits Advisors, or AMBA. I live a little bit north of Houston with my wife, who is a second grade teacher. She teaches in the same school that she went to elementary school in, the same school my 3 kids went to. I started my schooling in Bethany. So I was an Oklahoma kid, and we moved to Texas not too long after that, but got my start in Oklahoma and I really enjoyed that. But for the past 30 years, I have spent the bulk of my career in classrooms helping active educators understand what their retirement years are going to look like. So this is really kind of the genesis of why we do these webinars, to make sure that you can see, even those of you who are in your retirement years, what your opportunities are, what your options are, and help, as Saber mentioned, to live those golden years that you work so hard for, to enjoy those. And just a quick reminder, OREA has several different responsibilities. First and foremost, there is a watchdog to make sure that that pension that you worked for and the health benefit contributions that you receive from the state, any type of pay raises, COLAs, things like that, that's their main purpose. Coming out of COVID, this whole conversation about connecting our members back to their local community takes on even more special means. And I'm excited to hear that Blaine County had a higher turnout than they expected in prior to COVID. So people are yearning to get back together, and being connected to your local units and chapters is so important there. And then Saber touched on this as well. Another aspect of OREA is having those benefits, those discounts, some of those freebies, things that can help save you money, stretch your dollar further, especially in this time of inflation. And excuse me, to make sure that you have those available to you as a member of OREA. Real briefly, we serve over 80 associations just like OREA. David is our leader in Oklahoma, and David has a team scattered all over the state that can help you with any issues that you have. Come to any of your chapter meetings and be glad to help you out in that regard. So glad to have David and his team. David, if you do me a favor and put your email address and phone number in the chat, if someone wants to reach out to you and say, hey, come to my local chapter meeting, and we can take care of that. If you drop that into chat, I'd greatly appreciate it. That way our attendees today can know how to get a hold of you or your team, because David will cover from the Panhandle all the way to the hills in the east and take care of your chapter wherever you are. So just a quick reminder, having these benefits with OREA and AMBA together can help fill some of those gaps. Maybe when you walked away from the schoolhouse, you lost some benefits. They can fill those gaps that aren't covered by whatever the state offers you or giving you through your health allowance, so to speak. They're portable if you leave the state for whatever reason. They're not really tied to any network. You can do whatever you want to in that regards. You can take them wherever you want to go. You can extend your benefits to your parents or to family members who are no longer eligible for your benefits. Kids could have aged out of your benefits, or we see a lot of times retired educators that retire from the schoolhouse, but they continue to work a second job afterwards. But if they were responsible for their parents because their parents maybe needed care, they would have to quit that job. And so with proper planning, with the benefits that OREA offers you, you may be able to take care of your parents through your OREA benefits and be able to continue your income and take care of your family the way that they're accustomed to. Today, we're going to talk about this whole concept of long-term care. We're going to talk about home health care and those issues, and just kind of that aging in place concept. What we're going to do is we're going to go through kind of the myths and facts surrounding care. How many of us think we're going to need it, don't need it, things like that. We're going to discuss what long-term care is. Some of you on this call today may have a long-term care plan in place. And so we're going to kind of break down those historical components, how they work, and show you kind of how those things go together, then show you a little bit about some of your options and things like that. Before we do that, help David and I know who is on this call today. I'm going to launch a poll here, and I want to ask you, how many of you have some sort of a long-term care plan in place? You can click yes, no, or I'm not sure, and that's okay, but it'll help our conversation guide this morning, just so that we know exactly who's on the call and can help us with our discussion. So we'll open this up for about 15 seconds or so. And right now we're about even with everybody in here. So just a few more seconds out here. If you're not sure, that's okay. So we'll wrap this up and I'll share the results. And we are split all the way across the board, a third, a third, a third. Not sure, yes and no. So we're going to kind of touch a little bit of everything. So again, if you've got questions, drop them into chat, put them into Q&A. We can respond to you individually, or we can respond to the whole group with that question there. But this is why I do this webinar. This is a photograph of my father and I in July of 2020. It was in a nursing home facility in Austin, right around his 80th birthday. This was the last time that he knew who I was. He had severe vascular dementia. And after this point, he had been in a nursing home about 18 months or so, passed away in October of that year, a little bit later, but that was the last time that he knew who I was. And because of what my father had done many, many years ago in taking care of his long-term care needs, it really informed my experience in how long-term care works and what it did to protect my stepmother, my brother, and I, and making sure that all of his needs were taken care of and cared for in a manner in which we wanted to do that for him. So this is why I do this webinar. I'm so passionate about this topic. I do want to answer any questions that you've got. And so I'm going to kind of give some color commentary as we go through here. And I'm going to give you some stats, but I'm going to kind of share with you how I experienced it through my father's situation as we go through here. So really long-term care conversation. However we want to couch it, whether it's being cared for at home, wherever you're cared for, in a nursing home facility, whatever that is really about protecting your future. And your future is not only for yourself, it could be for your parents, it could be for your children. The decisions my father made many, many years ago, when one of the most healthy men I ever knew, he ran collegiately, he ran track at University of Oklahoma, and played basketball up into his mid-60s, was always an athlete. He still prepared. And when this stroke started happening and the dementia that subsequently followed, I was glad he had this long-term care policy, because it is about protecting your future. Because there are a lot of myths and facts surrounding long-term care. And there's nothing more that David and I enjoy doing than giving a pop quiz back to retired educators. So for those of you on the call today, grab a pen and paper. I want you to write down true or false to these 6 questions. Long-term care and long-term disability are the same thing, true or false. Very few people need extended long-term care. And really only people over 50 need long-term care. Nursing home confinement, true or false, is the only long-term care option. And number 5, Medicare simply pays for everything when it comes to long-term care, and I should just wait until I'm retired or until I'm in my final years of my life to worry about long-term care. So write down true or false each one of those. And in this pop quiz, if you answered anything other than false, that's incorrect. Every one of these situations is false. And oftentimes we hear from individuals, and I know David does when he and his team are out meeting with OREA members, I heard from somebody at church, or I heard about this at school, or I heard this down at the store. Those kind of, I'll call them water cooler conversations, and I've seen my mother do this when she goes to church in her Sunday school class. They sit around and they discuss, and there's a lot of misinformation that goes around. We're going to kind of dispel some of those myths today, give you some facts behind it, and really kind of help build your confidence in understanding this issue, especially as the holidays come up, as you're meeting with your kids, or maybe you're sitting around with your brothers and sisters talking about what are we going to do if something happens to mom, that type of thing. This is the discussions. We want to give you some facts around that. The biggest fact is that 70% of us, once we reach the age of 65, are going to need extended care of some sort in our lifetime. Now, that extended care doesn't mean that we're going to be needing it forever. It could be just for a few months after we have an accident or a fall or a surgery, or it could be for a much longer period of time, like my father, much longer after he was had his final surgery from one of his strokes. So again, an overwhelming number of us are going to need some form of extended care once we reach age 65. And what I want to do now is kind of spend a little bit of time for the third of you who have a long-term care plan already, kind of breaking down the components of that long-term care policy so that you understand how it works. You understand where there could be some issues and challenges. And I would highly encourage you, if you have a plan, let David and his team review it to show you, to make sure you have what you need today and what you may need in the future. So when we think about long-term care, I want to kind of put this in the component of a good hamburger. You know, when you build a good hamburger, you build it the way you want to satisfy your taste, but there are a lot of different components. Without the buns, it's just a patty melt, or it's just a ground steak, that type of thing. But with the buns, we're going to consider that the qualifications that would trigger your benefits within a long-term care policy. And there are two types of qualifications that make up this bun, so to speak, to get your long-term care benefits. The first one is what's called activities of daily living. Things such as toileting, bathing yourself, being able to transfer out of a bed into a wheelchair, from a chair into a walker, something like that, getting dressed, being able to feed yourself. Those things that are just pretty basic daily living activities. With a long-term care policy, most of them require you to lose permanently 2 or 3 of those activities of daily living, or for a longer period of time. Once you lose those and the doctor says she can't feed herself right now, she won't be able to dress, that type of thing, the long-term care plan kicks in. On the other hand, the top of the bun, another option to qualify for your benefits would be a cognitive impairment. So think of this such as dementia or Alzheimer's. And for Alzheimer's, a lot of times, Alzheimer's patients, they can do all of those activities of daily living. They just don't have other memory. They have other memory issues that cause them to be unsafe for themselves. In the case of my father, his early dementia diagnosis, he could still do all of his activities of daily living, but he would get up in the middle of the night and think that he was an electrician and try to do electrical work in the middle of the night with no training whatsoever, or he would be a wander off risk, that type of thing. So to qualify for your long-term care plan, if you have one, it's usually losing some activities of daily living or having a cognitive impairment. And then you come in and the meat of the hamburger, the meat of your long-term care policy is your benefit amount. Most old plans had anywhere from $100 to $300 a day daily benefit amount. Some plans had a pool of money that said you have X number of $100,000 for your care. So that's your meat. Once you qualify, you then start to receive your benefit. That daily benefit amount is corralled, put into parameters, so to speak, by the length of coverage that you choose. The shorter the length of coverage, the less expensive the policy usually was. So some policies were sold in 3-year, 5-year, or lifetime coverage, meaning that you would get $100 a day up to 3 years, or $100 a day for 5 years, or $100 a day for as long as you need nursing home coverage or long-term care coverage. With the pool of money, you could receive your benefits as quickly as possible, but once that pool of money ran out, your coverage stopped at that point. So it's a little bit different in the way the pool of money worked versus the daily benefit amount. Now, for the third of you who have a plan, if you bought an individual plan, meaning it was just on you, you didn't buy it through the school or any type of group plan, just on you, that individual plan probably had a daily benefit amount. If you bought it through the school or through a spouse's place of employment, it more than likely had some type of pool of money benefit. But again, it's important to review that because things change. Then you get into what's called an elimination period. And this is a mechanism that works just like your deductible on your homeowner's insurance policy. So say you have a tornado or a hailstorm that comes through Oklahoma, which we know that happens quite frequently. The first $1,000 or 2% of your home value, you have to pay out of your pocket before you receive any type of homeowner's insurance benefits. The elimination period says that you have to pay for your care for the first 60, 90, 180 days before you receive benefits. The bigger the elimination period, the smaller the premiums. So some people said, well, I can afford X amount. I'm going to get a big elimination period. And then whenever they start to need claim, they find out they've got to pay for the first 2 months, 3 months, 6 months before they can get coverage. So that's the elimination period, how that works. Then you start to bring in some other benefits in here, like location of coverage. Some old policies, they only cover you if you go into a nursing home. Some policies will cover you at home as well for a reduced amount. Some policies will cover you in between an assisted living facility. So there's different locations of coverage. The broader you select, the more expensive it usually became. Then you had some really, I don't say rare toppings, but less likely, but just as important. Some involve inflation, meaning that you could select to receive inflation protection. Say you took out a policy 20 years ago for $100 a day. Well, if you put an inflation protection rider on there, that allowed that $100 a day to grow over time. It could be simple interest, compound interest. It could be that you were offered increased coverage every couple of years, but if you didn't take it, you no longer got that option. So it's really important that you review if you have inflation protection. And then some policies, they're very rare. Some policies allowed for non-skilled services, meaning that you could have someone come in to change your sheets, do some light housekeeping, cook for you, things like that. Some things that didn't require a skilled nurse in your house. So some of those non-skilled services in those plans are very rare. They're very valuable protection, but again, you may have had those policies. The bottom line, I would encourage you, pull that policy out, dust it off, take a look at it, give David a call. We'll give you a chance with that QR code here in a moment. Find out what's best for you and find out what you have, because it's better to know now than it is after you go on claim or you have an accident or surgery and you don't have that ability to make that change. So it's better to understand that now. Okay, so let's go in and kind of break down some of the definitions of what is extended care. This whole concept of long-term care could mean care in your home, care in a nursing home, or a long-term care facility. Those are sometimes two different things. Or it could mean care in assisted living communities. And these assisted living communities are becoming more and more popular. These are oftentimes centered around maybe a church organization, a fraternal organization. There's one for retired teachers down in the Central Texas area. But they are where you go in and you rent or you pay a one-time lump sum within your for the facility, and it entitles you to have your facility plus food, activities. And then as you need progressive care, as you may need someone to come in and bring your food to you or provide medicine, it provides that continuing or progressive care as you need it. Okay, so extended care is all across the board. We have a couple in our church that recently retired in their mid to upper 60s, and they are purchased a one size lump sum and moving to a retirement community in Memphis that has this. They've got their own apartment, but as they need care, it's going to go with them throughout. So again, there's different types of extended care all across the board that's out there. And how you pay for that is just as varied as the opportunity or the places that you can go. Most people unfortunately pay for it out of their personal assets or savings. or they get assistance from family and friends. And what that means is usually they're spending down any of their nest egg that they have that they've saved up. You can't call the pension board and say, hey, double my pension, I need care. So you're having to take it from somewhere else, or you're having to ask a family member or a friend to come in and take care of you that may have to take off from their job. Dave and I have met many teachers that had to retire early to take care of their mother or father, so it shortens their pension, it shortens their income for their family. Very few people qualify to enter into the Medicaid program. I'll talk just briefly about that in a moment. It's very difficult, especially for teachers who are on a pension. Usually doesn't qualify you for Medicaid. Or then there's this option for extended care coverage. Wide variety of ways that you can take care of that for pennies on the dollar up front that provide that coverage for you if you need it. And you never know when or who's going to need this. We don't know what the future holds, but we know that as we age, we need more help doing some things that we used to could easily do for ourselves. And you never know when you're going to cross that threshold, so to speak. In my father's case, he had a couple of minor strokes, went back to work, worked up until he was about 72 or so. But he had after that, a slow decline where he wasn't as sharp. He was in sales. And so my stepmother said, you need to stay at home. He would still go into the store a couple of days a week just to keep hobbies up. And then he started having a series of major strokes where he was not near as sharp as he could and couldn't take care of himself. When he finally had his final situation and had to go into a nursing home that we found, I would go out and visit him. And I would notice that there were people in there who were younger than me. And I'm in my mid 50s. And I would start to ask the nurses, why are these people in here that are younger than me? And oftentimes it was from car accidents and traumatic brain injuries from falls. So you never know, even when you're younger, when something like this can happen to you. So it's important to have a plan regardless of any age, for yourself, for your adult children, for your parents, because you never know what's going to happen. And then just as we talked about in that pop quiz, there are some myths, some conversations that you may have even had amongst your friends that, oh, my health insurance will cover it. Health Choice is going to cover this, or Medicare is going to cover this. Private health insurance through the state, through your employer, through your spouse's employer, and Medicare are not designed for long-term care services. They're not priced that way. They're not designed to have that. There are some very limited Medicare coverage costs that are covered. We'll share that with you in a moment. Some people think that Medicare and Medicaid is the same. They're the furthest from the same. One is based on financial need and income. The other is the plan that we have that we've paid into all of our careers as well. And then, as I mentioned before, some people think, well, I'm too young to buy. I'll wait till I'm in my 80s to buy, the closer I am to this. Again, these myths are out there. I hate that people experience this because you never know when the need's going to be there, or they think that, well, once I get on Medicare, it's all smooth sailing because my premiums cover all of that. We're going to show you how that works here in just a moment. And these services that you can receive, receiving long-term care doesn't mean that you have to go to a nursing home. It was positioned to me many years ago, why would you work all of your career, especially for those of you on this call that are taking care of kids, why would you work all of your career simply to have someone else tell you where you've got to live your final years? Most of us want to live at home, where we're comfortable, where maybe our spouse is still there with us. We're surrounded by church friends, family, in a community where we want to be. We don't want to go off to a nursing home. And that was the last thing that my stepmother and my brother and I wanted to do with my dad, was to put him into a nursing home. But my stepmother could no longer care for him. He was a risk to himself. And so we had to make that decision to put him into a nursing home facility. As we've talked about, there's assisted living facilities, there are other communities, things like that. There are a lot of different places today. But when you have a plan in place, no matter what that plan is, you have control. You have some ability to predict and say, I want to stay here. I want my spouse to stay here. I want to be taken care of in this manner. And that's really what we want. We've worked all our lives serving others. Now it's time to have control over how we live those golden years. I want to show you a couple of things here, just some big picture numbers. I want you to grab a pen because I'm going to give you a website that you can look specifically for yourself in just a moment. These are some national averages of cost of care across the United States. You can see for a home health aide to come into your house to stay with you most of the time, it's about $25 an hour. To move to an assisted living facility where you have your own private apartment, for lack of a better term, it's about $71,000 a year. A nursing home semi-private room is a little over $108,000 on a national average. My father's was about $6,000 a month for a semi-private room in 2 different facilities that he was in. Neither one of them were the Taj Mahal, but we loved the staff. He was well taken care of, well fed. As his dementia took hold and he needed specialized care, we had to move him more to a memory care facility, a little bit closer to where my stepmother lived. And so the cost went up just a little bit, but for a semi-private room, about $108,000 a year, private room, almost $123,000 a year, that you can see that. Now, I want you to grab your pen because I want to show you some cost of care in Oklahoma. I want you to write down genworth.com, GENWORTH.com. Write that down on there because that is where you can go out and look at their cost of care. You can see out there, you can plug in your zip code, you can plug in your city, all across the country, all across the state, and look at what the costs are for home health aid, assisted living, semi-private or private room in a nursing home. Now, we've been doing this webinar since last October, David and I have. So I went in to check when I was updating some numbers, and I went in to check and see how has COVID impacted nursing home costs in the past year, okay? And this is what I found. In Oklahoma City, it's about a 13% increase across the board for home health aid all the way to nursing homes in Oklahoma City, okay? So you can see the cost there. Tulsa's kind of mixed. We've had no changes in certain things. Assisted living facilities have come down quite a bit in the Tulsa area. I've seen this across the country in the other states that I do these conversations in, mostly because what I think, and this is just purely anecdotal on my part, is that if someone was living in an assisted living facility during COVID, a lot of families said, we don't want mom or grandma to live in that facility. Let's move them home. Let's bring them home. So there was an exodus out of assisted living facilities into private homes to where the care is being provided at home. So it leaves a lot of capacity up there. We saw the opposite in nursing homes, though. Nursing homes continued to go up, and I think it's primarily because of COVID. And this is something I learned with my father. In the facility in which he worked, there were many of the workers who would rotate among other facilities. If they were therapists, nurses, things like that, they would work a shift at my father's facility and then go to another facility. Well, when COVID came in and the rules came in and said you can't go from facility to facility, it caused a shortage of employees and drove the cost up. And I think that's why you're seeing that. Now, we look at Durant, more rural Oklahoma. We're seeing this across the board in rural Oklahoma, a significant increase. And a lot of this from the home health aid perspective is the cost of gas, the cost of people going out to those locations. As far as your facilities, what we're finding is that there's not as many new facilities being built, and there's more of a demand for it, and the labor shortage is great. So the cost to provide the care in facilities is going up significantly. So again, I highly encourage you to go out to genworth.com, GENWRTH.com, look at that and plug in your city, state, zip code, wherever you live, and take a look at it for yourself to see what the cost is across the board, because it is changing due to inflation, COVID, and things like that. Mutual of Omaha is our preferred provider for OREA. They've been around for many, many years. Well, most of us think of Mutual of Omaha, everybody except David. Everybody on the call thinks of Mutual of Omaha as Marlon Perkins and Jim going out hunting in the wild kingdom and that kind of thing. Same company that always sponsored that does our long-term care in Oklahoma. They gave us some stats for last year. that said the average person that goes on long-term care claim is 78, and overwhelmingly 3-to-1 women to men. So what usually happens is the woman, the mom, will stay home taking care of her husband until he passes away because she doesn't want to put him in a nursing home. She wears herself out, and then she has to go then into a nursing home to get care that way. So we see it significantly more women than men. The top 3 reasons that care is needed is dementia, just like my father. Those cognitive impairments, seeing a huge rise in dementia, heart disease, and then arthritis. That really surprised me about arthritis being something that is one of the top 3 reasons why people have to go into on claim or need care. So you can see that, make the decision for yourself, what's important to you. We talk about this, how you're going to pay. This concept of how you're going to pay, most people will pull it out of their own savings. The problem is you may have that savings locked up in an old 403B or some type of tax deferred plan that you can't readily get cash from without selling it to maybe trigger some kind of a tax situation. Or right now, if the stock market dropped another 700 points this morning, you may be in catch-up mode. You may be selling assets that have lost money, that you're going to lose future earning opportunities, things like that. Some people talk about relying on Medicaid. Medicaid is truly a last resort program. In the 201 session next week, we're going to talk more about Medicaid, but usually you have to spend down all of your assets. You have to sign over your pension check, get it all out of your household. And then, even then, if you qualify for Medicaid and have to go into a nursing home, the state's probably going to seek reimbursement back from your estate once you pass away to get those things back. So again, your own personal savings, that first dollar can be very expensive, very tough to find. Don't count on Medicaid. But what about Medicare? And this is something I want to be really clear about. And David, I want you to jump in here in a moment and kind of share maybe some experiences you might have had with some individuals who thought Medicare would pay for it, things like that. Medicare does have a provision that they will pay for your recovery in a skilled nursing care facility after a 3-day hospital stay. Okay, so write down the number 3, write that down. Medicare will cover the total cost of skilled nursing care. When I say skilled nursing care, that is for you to get back up on your feet, be able to feed yourself, dress yourself, go to the restroom, shower, that kind of stuff. They'll pay 100% of that for the first 20 days after you've spent 3 days in the hospital. So remember, write that 3-day down, write 20 days down, write 20. So you got two numbers on your paper, 3 and 20. After that 20 days, you will pay, this says $185 in 2021. It's gone up to $193 or $191 in 2022. You'll pay close to $200 out of your pocket for that skilled nursing care. After 100 days, Medicare says, I'm out. Medicare says, we're not paying anymore. Now, how this worked for my father, Thanksgiving of 2018, my father had a more severe stroke and had to go into the hospital in Austin. They did some significant surgery, cleaned out his arteries, that type of stuff like that. And he went, after he was discharged, he spent about a week and a half in the hospital. He went to a skilled nursing facility right around the corner. Their goal was to get him back on his feet, to learn how to walk again, feed, all that kind of stuff like that. He spent 20 days there, gave my mother or my stepmother time to find a facility, because we knew after 20 days, he still wasn't going to be able to come home at that point. Medicare paid 100% for those first 20 days. Moved to the facility out west of west of Austin, and Medicare paid for a portion of that. His long-term care plan kicked in and started paying for the rest of that. The crucial thing to point out was that it was skilled care. Had my father gotten to the point to where he was totally able to take care of himself, Medicare would have stopped paying immediately, would have stopped paying at that point, and he would have been, the cost would have been on his own. Or If Medicare came in and said, your dad's no longer going to get better, he is chronically no longer going to be able to have to dress himself, feed himself, things like that. At that point, Medicare stops paying. Even if it's within that 100 days, even if it's in the first 20 days, Medicare stops paying when there's no chance of improvement, for lack of a better term. They only pay for skilled care. And we see this time and time again. Now, the question becomes, remember that number 3 that I wrote down there? I had you write down on the table or on your pad there? The hospital observation status is I say it's an insidious rule because Medicare changes this all the time. They move the goal line. You can go into the hospital for some type of surgery related to a fall, a hip repair, a knee replacement. And if your care is not coded as inpatient care and only as observation status, it doesn't matter if you stayed 3 nights in the hospital. Medicare does not pay for any of your care after you get out. Now, David, is there any times that you've ever seen this become an issue, or that you've seen OREA members fall and not have that Medicare coverage and need something else in the meantime?
Yeah, so the main thing I would say that I've seen, just the overwhelming majority is if someone is new to Medicare and has never been sick, never been hurt, never needed to really use Medicare, they might have no idea that this is out there. Whereas on the other side, if someone is, has been on Medicare and has gone through this, they 100% know. It's one of those things you kind of have to go through it, or have someone, maybe older than you in your family go through it to realize all of the stipulations around Medicare, that you have to be in the hospital, you have to be admitted, not under observation. You actually have to be in there, according to them, for 3 days just to get a little bit of coverage from Medicare on the back end. So I've definitely seen it both ways. And the overwhelming majority is someone is new to Medicare. They've never needed it, never been hurt or sick, and they just don't realize what all they actually have to go through to even get a very, very small amount of coverage from Medicare, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you, David. And the frustrating thing is, Medicare moves the goalpost every year. You could have gone in several years ago to have a knee replacement surgery, and you were admitted into the hospital, spent 3 nights, and got your skilled care afterwards. Medicare, by the simple stroke of a pen, can change that knee replacement surgery to an outpatient procedure. You still spend 3 nights or more in the hospital, but you get no skilled nursing care after the fact. So that's what's frustrating about it, and that's David's point. So again, if you have situations like that, I highly encourage you, contact David and his team. The other solution is to get yourself a plan in place. It helps supplement your out-of-pocket, any expenses you might have to pay for your expenses. It can protect those assets that maybe you need to use them as you plan, meaning that you were going to pass them along to family members, or oftentimes we see that the female in the relationship, they spend down all of their assets taking care of dad, and then dad passes away and there's not anything left to run the household, not anything left to take care of. You've worked too long in your life to have those situations taken from you. You need to take control. Having a plan allows you to do that. A good plan has some stay-at-home benefits, and this is what I love about the stay-at-home benefits. Not only is it household tasks, cooking, cleaning, dressing, all that kind of stuff. It's home health nurses that come out to see you, but it's also getting you the equipment or retrofitting your home, like widening doors, building ramps, putting pull bars in the bathroom, things that can keep you at home. The goal is to stay where you want to stay. No one looks forward to going to a nursing home. They want to stay at home. And so if you can retrofit your home and have a plan that will pay for that, keep you at home, that's the best of all worlds. So a good plan gives you those stay-at-home benefits or helps you out to pay for those if it's not fully covered that way as well. There are all different types of plans. I don't want to go into every type here. That's why you've got David and his team here that can help you out. Some of them will pay you cash right up front the minute you get a doctor's notification that you've got some type of of illness, or you have an accident, something like that, or a surgery, you can pay for the cost however you want to. In the case of my father, what happened is once we got him into his nursing home facility, we coordinated between the nursing home and his long-term care provider, and they just simply sent a quarterly payment to the nursing home. Just boom, boom, boom. Whatever that cost was, they sent it, and made it a piece of cake. Didn't have to worry about it. My father's care was taken care of, and there was no cost to my stepmother. So it really was the best of all worlds in that regards. But I don't want you to wait. Oftentimes we think, hey, I'll just wait as long as I can. The challenge, and David sees this, is we get people that say, I need it, but they've waited too long. And once you get over 75, you're looking at about a 50-50 chance of getting qualified for true long-term care. Not only does the cost go up, but your ability to get coverage is there. Now in 201, we're going to talk about some different ways that you can get coverage and some alternatives for it. But I encourage you, the younger you are, at least look at it and see what's available to you and qualify, because some plans don't have as much restrictions as others. And the cost, the longer you wait, the cost goes up. Now, don't look at the numbers here on the left. Just know that if you wait longer and longer, it does cost more, or could cost more. But the good news is David has multiple different plans. OREA has vetted these plans to make sure that they are protective of you, with strong companies, and will pay as they're supposed to pay. But just the older that you are, the more costly it can be. And there are other options. There are options that are shorter in length of coverage. The daily benefit amount is lower or greater. The biggest one that we see is that people have a long-term care plan, but they've got a 90-day or 180-day waiting period. Well, you saw some of those numbers. In Durant, Oklahoma, it could cost you $22,000, $23,000 for the first 3 months before your care plan kicks in. There are plans that can shorten that elimination period or wipe it out altogether. Some that can cover you at home, even some that have this non-skilled services in there as well. So there are lots of other options that are out there that can take care of that for you. So I want to open it up here. I want to stop the recording. If you've got any questions on the reaction bar, you can hold your hand up.